Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Are you ready to reach for the stars? Tune in to The Lost Wanderer, the #1 monthly podcast on good pods in astronomy. Join our host, Jeff, as he takes you on an interstellar adventure to explore the mysteries of space and the wonders of science. From rocket launches and distant galaxies to the latest discoveries in astronomy, each episode is a thrilling ride through the cosmos. Don't just gaze at the stars. Come explore the universe with us. Follow The Lost Wanderer wherever you get your podcasts, and let's discover the stars together.
My dad was really, really special, and I loved my dad a lot.
I'm proud of him, and that even though he isn't here with us, but he died as a true hero.
I miss everything about him.
In the moment that the officers and I had to come see the children, my biggest reaction was, I don't have 7 arms. I have 7 children who just lost their father, and I don't have 7 arms to wrap around them.
I'm Frank Silla, chairman of the Stephen Silla Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Our foundation is committed to delivering mortgage-free homes for Gold Star families and fallen first responder families.
To not have to worry financially is a huge peace of mind. The thought of, what in the world will I possibly do to pay the bills? How will I possibly let the children have a life that feels normal? I don't want them to have to quit their piano lessons or their basketball. I don't want them to feel that we have to move into a little apartment and struggle financially in addition to the emotional weight.
There are over 1,000 families that need our help. Tunnel to Towers is honoring those heroes that risked their lives by providing them with mortgage-free homes.
Those who serve us and then lay down their lives protecting our freedoms and our safety, the least we can do is $11 a month to give them that peace of always knowing there's a home, there's that sanctuary when life feels like it's been tipped upside down, because it has. When you lose a parent in the line of duty, to know you can go home, you can be safe, there's no risk of losing your home. That's a peace of mind that I can't believe you can get for $11 a month.
I'd like to ask you to contribute $11 a month to support their efforts.
Please donate $11 a month by calling 1-844-BRAVEST or visit tunneltotowers.org.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised. And welcome everyone to another episode of He Said, She Said. I am your host for this evening. Again, with me is my other awesome co-host, the awesome Rowdy Rick. How are you doing this evening?
If I had known the background noise was going to be this way, I would have made the background for the show a beauty salon. Just saying. Anyway, for those of you wondering why Aggie might sound a little bit different, we noticed that for some reason, for the first time ever, it seems the Restream equipment is picking up her laptop fan. So she is using her microphone on her laptop, which makes the noise less noticeable. So I have a question, because when I tried to record the sound and let her hear it, my system wasn't picking it up. So my question is, as the show goes on, if anybody notices a loud humming noise coming from Aggie's side of the room, please let me know so I can figure out whether it's actually going to impact us going forward or not. The only reason I had her unplug the microphone for tonight was because it was loud enough and I'm tired enough it would have driven me crazy for 90 minutes. But if it's going to continue to be an issue and nobody else but me can hear it, eventually I'll get past it because I can just turn the gain down on my headset a little bit. So just let me know if you guys are hearing it or not so we can kind of go forward and figure out what to do from here. My guess is it's the laptop fan, but I don't know why it's suddenly picking it up. But anyway.
Like I said, it's always on, so I don't know why it's picking it up today. It's like today, it's a banner day for everybody.
Yeah, everybody's like, I have made the decision Calvin's like, I've made an executive decision not to drink tonight, and it's probably a bad one. And everybody else is saying, yeah, I make that decision every night and regret it. I've been feeling that way lately. I've kept my house dry on purpose because I've been working so much. I'm like, if something happens in the middle of the night and I have to get up and start writing about it, I don't want to be drunk when I do it. So yeah, I haven't had a drink in about a month. So other than I will admit, a couple days ago, I bought like a 6-pack of twisted iced teas and drink those like one a day till they were gone. But as far as heavy stuff, I haven't drank anything in like a month.
I tend to make myself one cocktail for the podcast, and that's pretty much where I keep it. Unless I have to call relatives in Puerto Rico, in which case I have to have more than one. But that's just maybe once a month that I do that. So it's not. So it's kind of I'm not having one tonight, but that's because I went out to dinner and I had a margarita, and so I just figured, well, I've had my one, and I'm still giddy about everything that's been going on today, so I really don't need the booze.
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, Andrew, it's hard to regret not drinking when you're never not drinking. So just throwing that out there. There's a reason you've never had to regret not drinking, because your bloodstream is 80 proof bourbon. So just saying.
I just, like I said, I only have like the one cocktail for each podcast, and I pace myself. I don't want to get to the point where, hey, it's like just drinking sugar with a little spikiness in it, that kind of thing. So I limit myself. And of course, Lent is coming up next week. So I'm kind of like trying to psych myself up for that, because as everybody knows, Aggie goes hellbound into Lent.
Yeah. So
pardon the pun.
Well, I mean, for you Catholics, it probably feels like hell. And I'm only going to say this once, so I hope Jeff is listening, because he gives me shit a lot. So I am never going to repeat this again. But the whole "I drink if I had to do a show with me too," he's like, yeah, I get that, Aggie. So I'm just going to say this once. Jeff, you are probably low key one of the best hosts we have. You do tons of research. You know your topics cold.
Sure is.
Your graphics and everything else are absolutely amazing. So quit talking shit about yourself. That's my job.
Oh, look, my other podcast partner just showed up, and he is offended because I only have one cocktail for our show. Brad, sweetie, if you're going to drive me to drink, at least take me to my favorite bar next time.
Wait, I'm just offended that we've been doing this show together for now like 18 months, and this is the first time Brad showed up in the chat room.
He's got plans for tomorrow, so he's not going out tonight. That's my guess, because I know he has a standing date every Friday night. So my guess is they have plans for tomorrow, so they're
Oh,
staying home.
so he's showing up tonight because normally he's out partying and says, "Screw you guys."
Yes.
I can't even pull it up on my phone for 5 seconds to say hello and give you a count or anything. I see.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I may get in trouble.
I'm just giving everybody shit today. But it's funny because Brad and I were talking about it yesterday because of the counts on my show, and it occurred to me that I have numbers that nobody's ever able to see because I have 6 or 7 friends that all work in different places now that will listen to my show during the day, and half the time they're at lunch at the time. So I literally have lunchrooms full of 300-400 people that are all listening from one phone. And I'm like, so really, I probably have a hell of a lot more numbers than I ever realized, and I can't count them because everybody's listening on the same phone. So I'm kind of starting to understand all the people that do music and stuff that are mad when you don't have the licensing and you're playing their stuff because literally
Right.
thousands of people are hearing it and they're not making any money off of it. So I kind of finally understand it because I literally probably have. Because one of the guys, he's like, dude, you got to understand there's probably 300 people in the lunchroom with me when I'm on lunch. And he said, and I know at least one other person on one of the later lunches that listens to your show too. So that's at least 2 with a full lunchroom. And then my brother-in-law was talking to me today and he's like, dude, I have like half the people in my store listening to you now. So I was like, and usually they just listen from my phone when I'm on my breaks and stuff. I'm like, tell them to pull it up on their own shit. So it counts.
Yes, Brad does pimp our show.
I know.
So yeah,
he's
a good pimp. He's a good pimp.
I am just giving Brad with the good hair some shit. That's all. Because everybody's picking fights today, so I figured I'd join in.
It has been a banner day today. I will say that. I did not have White House melodrama on my bingo card, and that is a fail by me because I should have had that as my free space.
I was going to say that should have been a free space with this administration. But before we get too far into the conversation, I'm going to read you a couple of different quotes, and I want you to tell me who you think said them. The first one is this one. Our response will depend on the size of the incursion. Was that Joe Biden or was that Donald Trump?
Biden?
Exactly. But can you imagine if Putin had walked into Ukraine in 2018 and that had been Donald Trump's response?
No.
Everybody would have lost their shit. We told you he was a Russian plant. Now, there's another really important quote today that almost nobody from the left is mentioning, and it's in the middle of this heated exchange with Zelensky. And Donald Trump says the following: I'm not on your side. I'm not on Putin's side. I'm on America's side, and I'm on the world's side, and I want peace, and you're gambling about World War III. That made his position pretty much crystal fucking clear, in my opinion. And when you've got the previous guy basically saying, hey, a small incursion, meh, we don't really care about that. But now everybody's like, I can't believe that Donald Trump is just proving that he's a Russian stooge. And then they made this big deal about the Russian outlet being in the Oval Office today. Nobody mentioned the fact that Russian outlet managed to sneak into the Oval Office today. And when they caught them in there, they threw them the fuck out. Nobody's talked about that.
No one covered that part.
They weren't even supposed to be in there. And it's like, no, see, you don't understand. Because they found out they were in there and they made them leave.
Yeah, and I'm just like I'm witnessing our legacy media twist itself, trying to make this into it being Trump's fault. That it was Trump who was Trump and Vance who were very hostile and doing all that stuff. And I have to give credit to Richard Hanania because he actually watched the whole thing and he put out a tweet that explained exactly everything that was going on. And he's a big Ukraine supporter. He's pretty liberal and everything. And I seldom agree with him on anything. But I watched the same thing. And I have to give him credit because he was very honest on his description on everything that happened, during the 40 minutes. And he says it's a disservice that they're concentrating on the last 10 minutes, but you have to, when you put it in context of the entire conversation that was going on, Zelensky was the one that started it. He got mad at Vance. And I don't think anybody else caught it, but he kept referring to Vance as JD and then to Trump as Mr. President. And that is very insulting, and then he called him a name in Ukrainian, and which was also an insult. And if you even had the sound off and you were watching what was going on and you just watched the body language from all three, and Rubio, if you caught him on camera as well, you would know that the situation wasn't started by Vance or Trump.
And it wasn't. And that's the thing that pisses me off the most is all the media outlets. And I mean, even some of the right-leaning media outlets are only showing the part where everything came to a head. They're not showing the 40 minutes prior where everybody's talking and getting along. And they're talking about how they're getting ready to sign this huge deal. And this is going on and that's going on. And then all of a sudden you hear Zelensky say, well, I'm not really sure a ceasefire is going to work because Putin breaks all the ceasefires. And that's when Trump's like, he's broken ceasefires with Bush, with Obama, and with Biden. He's never broken one with me. So and that was when Zelensky started saying, I need guarantees. And that's when Trump said he's never broken a guarantee with me, or he's never broken a ceasefire or an agreement with me. So what Trump was trying to say is I am the guarantee because he is willing to work with me. Now, I do admit that some of the things that Trump has said about, Russia apparently being okay with peacekeeping troops, apparently now the Russian media is backing away from that. So I think there was a lot more work that was going to need to be done here one way or the other. But for the guy who's coming in hat in hand to come into the people's house, come into one of the most respected rooms in the people's house and talk shit to the president of the United States and the vice president of the United States, I'm going to be completely honest with you. And this is probably going to piss some people off. If Volodymyr Zelensky came into my house talking to me the way he was talking to JD Vance and Donald Trump, I would have fed him his fucking teeth and then shown him the door. Because you don't come into somebody else's house, especially when you're basically begging them for help and then talk shit. That's my problem. This has been a deal that's been in the works for months. There are parts of this that I didn't even know today until I was kind of flipping through channels and caught some of the Brett Baer stuff when he had the secretary of the Treasury on. He's like, no, nobody seems to understand. This was a deal that was supposed to be signed 3 weeks ago. And then he backed out of it. And then he was supposed to sign it 2 weeks ago in Munich. And he met with Secretary of State Rubio and Vice President JD Vance. And by the end of that meeting, he decided he wasn't going to sign it. So then he was supposed to come in today and sign it. And then he picks a fight instead of signing it. And there's somebody that has made a point. And if I could remember who it was, I would give them credit, but I'm not pulling it up right now. Because every time I open my X account, I start fighting with retards and I don't want to be distracted. That there is an angle to this that I don't think anybody's looking at. And I think Zelensky's going to try to use this to save face in Ukraine. And then basically go back to Ukraine, and this is them talking, not me. Explain to the people that the war is unwinnable, take whatever kind of deal that he can get, and then blame us for everything falling apart. Which is an angle I myself hadn't considered. So it's about the only thing that makes sense with as much of a dick as he was today.
Because you don't go, like you said, you don't go into your host's home, demand money, and then insult them because they're not giving it to you the way you want, and expect this was a major error for Zelensky to make. He was not reading the room. He understood. He thought, and this is my opinion, he thought that bargaining with Trump was a carryover from the bargaining with the Biden administration. He thought that as the Biden administration and as the Europeans have pretty much told him, was that having the moral high ground is how you do the whole diplomacy thing. And I'm like, that's not the way it's going to work. All of the European people who were rooting for Zelensky and that came out today, we stand with Ukraine and all that stuff. They have that moral high ground, but they're not the ones, basically putting boots to the ground and giving a lot of military aid and doing the grunt work. They just say it. It's hashtag diplomacy to say, I stand with Ukraine and not do anything. Sweden comes out and says, we stand with Ukraine. They've given quite a bit of money, but it's a tiny drop compared to what we've given. I think their total now comes to about $2 billion. And Norway comes out and says the same thing. And Norway has given even less than Sweden. And you have countries like Latvia and Croatia who, I don't know what kind of support they have given the war, but I can't imagine that they have a lot of money to spare. I've been to Croatia. It's the only thing that saved them was the fact that that stupid show that was on HBO with a bunch of dragons, the George R.R. Martin show.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of the name of it.
The one with the Iron Throne, Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. There you go. Which
that
is fun.
Was filmed there.
I should have caught that because Glenn Beck was talking about that today, and Stu was like, "I've never watched that show, or I would have gotten most of these references." And I was having the same thought because I've never watched it.
I never watched it. I tried reading it, and then I started thinking, "My God, I'm reading Quo Vadis. This is what this is," So I just gave up. But the whole when I was there, it was prior to Game of Thrones starting filming and everything, and it was it wasn't a destitute country, but they welcomed tourism because that provided them with, income, and it was very inexpensive to stay in Croatia and, enjoy the beaches and all that stuff. And it's a lovely, lovely country. Don't get me wrong. It's beautiful. But after Game of Thrones started filming there, you couldn't find a place to stay for what you were paying before. I mean, they just took advantage of that whole thing because people wanted to go see the areas where this show was being filmed. I mean, it's an absolutely stunning place. I do not blame people for wanting to go see it. But I can't imagine that even with the tourism dollars, Croatia would have that much money to send to Ukraine. I can't see it. And if they do, then their people are suffering. And it's the same with Latvia. I did notice that I think it was Osip Defender who had the thread of all of the countries that were not the countries themselves, but either their prime ministers, their ministers of defense, or presidents, or chancellors were giving their support to Ukraine. So he was doing a thread on all of those, and I did notice that Poland was not among them, and neither was Hungary. And usually, those countries, at the beginning of this war, you could have counted on those countries to actually be very supportive because they were part of the Iron Curtain. They were Eastern Bloc countries, and they had been under the boot of the USSR. So at the beginning, I remember that they did, and now they're more hesitant, and and I'm wondering why, because I know they still hate Russia. That is a given. You cannot find a single poll, at least when I was there, that had anything nice to say about Russia except for one thing. They loved their absence. That was it. So they still remember, they still teach it in school, and they're very wary of Russia. And that was one of the things when the realignment was going on. All of the BRAC was going on, and President Bush was shutting down some of the bases in Germany. The contract was to put 3 bases in Poland near the Russian border. And there was one base in particular that was, there was one spot that was like prepped to go. The entire infrastructure was there already. Then Obama became president, and one of the first things that he did was renege on that. So we never actually put any bases there. Poland has been kind of waiting. During the first Trump administration, they were moving towards that, and then all of the impeachment stuff started happening, and it just went, sideways and whatnot. But like I was saying, there were a lot of countries that are in support of Ukraine, and as well they should be. I mean, the people are the ones that are suffering. And I can understand standing with Ukraine. I can understand you feeling sorry for the people of Russia as well, because they didn't call for this. But I don't know if those countries are going to fill the monetary void that is going to be left when we don't provide it.
Well,
And
so
I don't think Zelensky understands that.
Well, yeah. So here's my problem with all of this, right? First of all, because it's being brought up in the chat that Ukraine was moronic for agreeing to give up their nukes. My problem with all of that, because that's one of the biggest pushbacks I've been getting all day today, is so you're telling me that America doesn't keep its promises anymore. Look, I don't even remember when that was negotiated, but I believe it was late 90s, early 2000s, which means we were just really starting to become functional adults, which means we had nothing to do with these decisions. And we had no idea how broke we were. That's the thing that I keep trying to come up with these people with. Okay, so you assume JD Vance and Donald Trump are wrong. So you explain to me, keeping in mind that we are currently $3 trillion in debt with a $37 trillion deficit, it goes up by like $1 a second at this point. And tell me how you would do something differently without pushing us either into World War III or pushing us over the fiscal cliff that we are currently teetering on. And the funny thing is, I never get an answer back. All I ever hear is, we were the ones that talked them into giving their nukes, and we should be helping to make sure they're okay. I'm pretty sure the $350 billion worth of money and equipment we've given them should have fulfilled that obligation. It isn't our fault that the American people allowed themselves to have an election stolen to put a namby-pamby asshole who in the beginning was telling them what they couldn't do, what they could do, and then by the end was saying, oh, we're going to give you everything. I mean, I remember in the beginning of this thing that Biden was even saying, don't you dare use those weapons or we're going to cut off all of our funding. That's not how any of this was ever supposed to work.
No.
But
and here's the thing. We are giving all of this money, and now we're finding out that they're not even accounting for half of it, for most of it. And this is from Zelensky himself. Yeah, we can account for 75 billion, but we don't know what happened to the other 100 billion. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? What happened to, I mean, if my girlfriend runs a store, she has to keep a running, she has a bookkeeping. She literally has a book, not just on the computer, but she keeps a paper trail as well to make sure that everything tallies, right? Well, at the end of the day, you're closing out your cash register, you count the money that's in there, you make sure that it tallies up with what the receipts say and blah, blah, all this stuff. And you're telling me that when we give money to a country, they don't have to give us a receipt of where everything was spent? It's our money. This is not a gift. And then unless it's a gift, but last I understood, this was not a gift.
Well, that's just it. They've been treating it like it was a gift.
Exactly. This is the problem. This is not a gift.
That's part of the reason why Trump has been so mad, because even though we got some pushback from the Prime Minister of Great Britain the other day, a lot of what Britain has promised to Ukraine and has given to Ukraine was given under guarantee. The Prime Minister is currently trying to say that it's not, but the receipts are there. You can see how much of it was given, with the point that they were at some point supposed to pay it back, even if it took forever to do it. And I think that's really all Trump was looking for. And the part of this that nobody's really talking about, that didn't occur to me until after the blow up today, and after Zelensky was basically unceremoniously tossed out of the White House, Fresh Prince style, was this. I think Donald Trump, and I'm not trying, before anybody yells at me, no 4D chess. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that I think he was trying to find a way to help make sure that Ukraine was going to be okay, that Ukraine was financially stable, and also find a way to get a peacekeeping force there that didn't involve putting them into NATO, because that would have automatically triggered World War III. And that's why everybody was freaking out when the Biden White House was like, yeah, sure, we don't care if they join NATO. I mean, I just want everybody to think about this from a logical perspective, because I don't think we do that enough. Let's say that the shoe is on the other foot, and all of a sudden, either Canada or Mexico, if it still existed, suddenly decided that they were going to petition for entry into the Warsaw Pact Treaty. What the fuck do you think we would have done? We would have had troops rolling into their borders in 5 minutes, because
Mhm.
there's no way we would have allowed that to happen. And the thing about it is, everybody's talking about how we gave promises to Ukraine. Well, we also promised Russia that nobody on their border states would be allowed to petition for entry into NATO. That was one of the conditions we made when we started suing them for peace and started trying to tear apart the Cold War. That's been on the books for forever. And that was a promise that we broke. So don't come to me about broken promises, because we're talking about multiple layers of potential broken promises here. And we're talking about what could be the ultimate broken promise, because the world has been using us as a goddamn piggy bank and a goddamn police force for 50 fucking years, and we're broke. And now that we're trying to tell them we're broke, they just want to keep latching on like fucking bloodsuckers until there's nothing left but a corpse and just expect us to stand here and take it. That's my
I think
problem, and that's exactly what he showed us today. When he came into our house and said, you're going to give this money to me on my terms, and you're going to give me the guarantees that I want." And Trump looked at him and said, "No, the fuck we're not. I'm not on your side. I'm not on Putin's side. I'm listening to the world, and I'm on America's side, and I'm trying to find peace, and you're trying to start World War III. So fuck you. Get out of my house."
it was it was glorious. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm watching Vance and Zelensky going at it, and Trump in the middle with his hands, just like looking back and forth, going, "I know he's fighting. It's okay."
I
And
mean,
then finally, he was like, "Hold up," and then he took over. But I'm just like I'm trying to. I'm sure everybody has seen how people from Europe have been reacting, about how uh, they don't like America anymore, or that we can't stand up for ourselves. We don't need America. We're not their allies anymore. America is not the good guy. Blah blah blah. There was a time that I would have been really afraid if I had heard somebody say something like that, because I used to think that we had allies and the allies liked us. And then I learned you don't have to like your ally. Your ally is not necessarily your friend. And that's how politics is. That's where your diplomacy comes in. And that's how you make allies, because you have common interests that are worth protecting against those that don't have those interests and would rather see those interests destroyed. So you not necessarily are friends with your allies, but you do have that common tie and everything. And then I started thinking, if people really do feel that way, where they don't like Americans anymore, and they don't consider us an
they've never.
ally, and they,
That's the thing.
and
They've
all this stuff.
never
And
liked
then,
us.
well,
They've
that's just it.
pretended to
They
like
never
us.
really liked us, and then it made me think, why didn't they like us? Oh, they didn't like us because we were protecting them, because we were the ones providing the protection. We were the ones that were, every time there was a tussle somewhere, they would come running to us to help us fix it. It has been like that for a very long time. And I wondered how it was that we got into that position and stayed in that position. And I'm starting to think, with the way that politics has advanced, with the way culture has advanced, with the way, technology has advanced, we are no longer obligated to be in that position. And I think that the rest of Europe is seeing that that is a distinct possibility, and it's not going to come out in their favor, specifically due to the fact that they decided, against their better judgment, I might say, to open their borders some 20 odd years ago. And it has been disastrous at every turn. I don't know of any country that has actually had a positive um, net to allowing so many immigrants to come unvetted, and it's just I mean, you guys see it with Great Britain. You see it in Sweden. You see it in Norway. You definitely are starting to see the ramifications in Italy, whereby that wonderful woman has now decided, yeah, we're closing our borders and kicking people out. And she's she's absolutely right. You saw it with Poland closing its borders and Hungary closing its borders, the EU getting mad at those countries saying you can't close your borders because you're part of the EU. And they in turn said, we keep our sovereignty. That's part of the contract. And the EU telling them, well, that's not how it works. And they say, no, that's how sovereignty works.
Exactly how it works. That's exactly how it works. All right, so backing up to the chat for just a minute. Stephen, slightly different point of view. Not only did we win the divorce and the first time, and we're tired of not getting our alimony, we then came in and saved them from an abusive relationship with Germany, not once but twice, and we're still not getting our fucking alimony. That's why we're pissed. So that's point number one. Point number two, you guys are right. They've never liked us. They've only liked our money, but that was our choice way back in the day before most of us were alive, when the Cold War was just really starting to become a thing. We took it upon ourselves to make sure that we were standing up against Russia, and we were carrying the brunt of everything regarding the Cold War, and that was our decision because we knew the rest of the world really didn't have the piggy bank to be able to do it. The problem is that was over 4 generations ago, and the world has changed immensely, and we can't keep doing it. The thing that pissed me off the most, and the reason why at this point I'm just ready to pull the funding from every fucking thing and let everything die that doesn't have to directly do with us, is finding out that USAID and all of the other fingers in cookie jars were helping pay for every single bit of universal health care on the rest of the fucking planet. And we're the only reason they're able to have it because we're either paying for 90% of their defense or we're helping them foot the bill for their medical shit too through these slush funds. No, hell with that. We have homeless people on our own streets. We have veterans that are dying in the streets that can't get health care. I am not a communist, but there is one group of people that I believe deserves everything that we can give them, and those are the people that were willing to put their bodies on the line to make sure that you and I could sleep safe at night. And we're not doing it. We're not taking care of them, and that should be one of our first priorities, is to make sure that they are okay first, not the rest of the world. Not to give everybody their money for the little pet projects so they can funnel it to this, that, and the other, and everybody in the world gets universal health care, and then they all get to thumb their noses down at us because you're the only developed Western nation that doesn't have universal health care. That's because we're paying for it.
And Brad makes a really good point. He mentioned that the Europeans tried to say, hey, we're going to go ahead without y'all. And he was like, great. The first step is refusing to take our money. And I think this is what's pissing off a lot of the Western European nations, is that because of what happened with USAID, because of all of the tentacles that we found, the webbing and all that stuff that has been cut, they're now starting to feel the pinch because they did rely on that money. That funneling system was amazing and terrifying when you think about it as to how far it extended and to how many different areas it extended it to. So once that spigot started being slowed and eventually will be shut off completely, Europe is going to have a big reckoning, a big financial reckoning. One of the things that the European Union wanted to do in its inception, and I remember this back in the 80s when they first started organizing the European Union, was that they wanted one monetary system. And they wanted to compete with the US dollar. And that was one of the smartest things that Great Britain did, was yeah, we'll be in the European Union, but you cannot tie our pound to the euro. That's separate. So they did not tie uh, their pound sterling to the euro. And so when Brexit happened, um, it wasn't as painful because the monetary system was not tied into the European Union, but everybody else's is. And that was one of the contingencies when we were there. Poland was still not in the European Union. Hungary had not become part of the European Union. And they were basically going through the process of, it was almost like a fraternity rush. I mean, the European Union was saying, well, you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do this other thing. And once you do those, then we move to level 2. It was really like watching a frat. And so once they completed all of the tasks that the European Union threw at Poland and Hungary, they were able to become part of the European Union. But part of the thing was because of what happened with Great Britain saying, no, you cannot tie the pound sterling, was one of the conditions was that they had to be on the euro. So they had to give up their zloty and they had to give up their uh, krona. Krona is Sweden. But they had to give up their monetary system and convert that into euro. When that happens, and I'll give you the example that I know of Germany. When Germany went into the euro, one day, say you had 50,000 Deutschmark in your account, that was cut in half. When you went into the euro, it was cut in half, so you only had 25,000 euro. However, when you went into to go buy your groceries, whatever cost 5 mark cost 5 euro. So your savings were cut in half, but everything else was a 1-to-1. Same thing happened to Poland, same thing happened to Hungary, same thing happened to pretty much everybody. To extricate yourself from the euro is going to be extremely painful. But there are some countries that are willing to do it. That's why, if you guys notice, Poland was kind of shifting left. USAID was heavily invested in changing the politics in Poland. They wanted Poland to shift completely left as much as possible because they knew that Poland was going to be problematic. And it started shifting left, but it didn't it didn't finish. They thought that they were going to have more time during this administration, and that unfortunately came to a halt. Now USAID doesn't have any money in Poland, and Poland's like, now people are starting to figure out, hey, these people were actually invested in changing the political climate in Poland. What else were they doing? So Poland is doing an internal investigation as well. Most people are not aware of that, but they are trying to figure out what's been going on, because it was very weird that a traditionally friendly country, one who really wanted to partner with the US to have bases there, suddenly decided to adapt all of these DEI things, and suddenly decided to go into the ESG, and suddenly decided to do all of these things. And it just didn't make any sense. Well, now it was all USAID pushing buttons and stuff like that. So you have those two countries who are now have shut borders. You have Italy, who has now decided, yeah, we're not dealing with Italy anymore. And several other countries are now considering it, and that's going to put the European Union, the Commission, in a lot of trouble, because part of the reason that they wanted this conglomeration of nation states was to create one bigger nation state under which all of them had to kind of surrender their sovereignty. But when you read the Constitution, they could not pass that Constitution for the longest time because there was a phrase in there that nobody would vote on. And the phrase was, you had to give up your entire sovereignty to the European Union. Well, no country's going to do that. So they had to take that phrase out before they could, pass the European Constitution. So with that phrase gone, that means that all of these countries still have their national sovereignty. Now, whether or not they decide, hey, it's time for us to step up and become our own sovereign nations, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But now you have this problem with Ukraine and Russia, and you have the problem of the US. Hey, we're not going to give money. Oh, look, the spigot is now being closed off from USAID that nobody knew about. All of these things that are happening right now are making all of these countries extremely nervous. People are reacting in different ways. They're saying, well, we don't need the US anymore. Well, the problem is, yeah, you kind of do, because it's like you said, it was the US that was propping them up in the first place. Either we were paying for their entire military, we were paying to protect them from this, that, or the other thing. We were paying for their entire medical industry. We're the ones that pay for all of the R&D of all the medicines around the world. And, you know, everybody's asking me, well, why is it so much cheaper to get your medicines in Germany than it is here? I'm like, because Germany doesn't pay R&D the way we do here. I mean, I'm not saying they don't pay anything, but I'm saying we pay the majority of the R&D. And all of these little dominoes are now starting to fall. And I don't think the European Union understands that once we decide, hey, yeah, we're not going to pay for that, they might turn to China, but China is also propped up to a certain degree by the US. So I'm sitting back and I'm watching. I mean, today was just an amazing day. I never thought that I would see something like that, because we've always been told, if you have an argument or if you have a disagreement with somebody, you take it behind closed doors. You don't want other people seeing it. You never want anybody seeing that. But Zelensky put it out there on the table because he thought that he had the upper hand, and he thought he was going to shame Trump, because he was told that having the moral superiority is how you get your way. And that's not the way it works with Trump. It doesn't really work in real life either.
Well, so one of the things that's driving me crazy, because I just saw this from Governor Kathy Hoochie Cooch Hochul as well, and I know her last name is pronounced Hochul, but the joke doesn't work if I don't say it that way. Was Ukraine is our ally, Putin is not. It's not that complicated. So I have a question for everybody today. Did Majetsky really act like our ally today?
No.
Because I'm going to say no. He didn't act like an ally today. He acted like somebody who knows that he's been able to browbeat the fuck out of the previous administration and get everything that he wanted. And one of the things that I loved that Vance pointed out today, because I haven't heard anything about this from the left, because this is the difference between 2016 and 2024. In 2016, they were screaming and yelling that $150,000 worth of Facebook ads paid for by Russia influenced our elections. I don't know about you guys. I don't know if any of you have ever run businesses or not. I have, and I buy Facebook ads all the time. I've never bought that much all at once, but if I add them all together, I probably have bought about $150,000 worth of social media buys in the last 16 years. Let me tell you, it's barely done anything. So if it was that easy for them to influence our elections, that's a bigger problem than the fact that they were able to influence our elections with $150,000. And if they were able to swing an election for 150 grand, that was the smartest, biggest political buy in history, and was a miracle bigger than the miracle on ice that it actually worked. But so let's fast forward a little bit, because in 2024, Majetsky is stumping for the other side, for Kamilama Hamasnik in Pennsylvania, arguably the most important swing state in the country. He's pitching for the other side, and then he still has the gall and the balls to come into the Oval Office that is occupied by the side that he tried to fight against, hat in hand, and then still wanted to buck up to the vice president. Are you really that fucking retarded?
Well, you know, to give him some credit, the man is a comic. I mean, literally, that's what he was. Up until the color revolution came along, he was an actor and a comic. I mean, you know, And suddenly he's leading a country. And I'm like, how did that happen? Oh, wait, I really can't say it because we did have an actor who became president. But to give Ronald Reagan due, he started off in California. Okay, so it's not like he did the Trump thing and became president one day because he said, oh, you know what? I think I'll become president today. And he was. That's pretty much how Trump did it. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like Trump is that Trump never paid his dues politically. And that kind of makes me think that, the fact that you have to think that you have to pay dues politically in order to get there is a problem in of itself. Because that's not the way it was supposed to be. That's not the way you're supposed to be able to become anybody. You just have to be 35 years old, And so for me, when that happened with Trump, I was like, this is so cool. This is so funny. And it was what we needed, really. And Trump has been a big wake-up call here in the United States as well. But he's a wake-up call to other areas in the world. And I really don't think that people really appreciate it until you started seeing all of his tariff talk and how everybody else got their dander up. And then he threatened them with tariffs. And oh boy, they were real quick to say, no, wait up, hold up. So you start looking into the whole tariff situation and you realize, holy crap, they really get the better end of the bargain than we do when it comes to tariffs. That's why they're so scared about losing the status quo. You have countries like Colombia who were like, no, we're not going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And not even 5 hours later, they were like, yeah, okay, we'll take the prisoners.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
The funniest thing about all of that is that was on a day that the left was on a tear about Donald Trump was playing golf again, and dude ended a trade war between the 9th and the 10th holes.
Yes. And this is one of the things why, the art of diplomacy. There used to be a time where, you had to be a Kissinger. I totally get that. A lot of people don't know Kissinger had a unique and rare gift. Very few people have this gift, but he could literally, he could only give you 5 minutes of his time. But during those 5 minutes, he was completely devoted to you. You felt like you were the only person in the room. It was really weird to watch. I remember my father telling me about that because he actually went to a function where Kissinger was at. This was back in the, I want to say, early 80s. And he was in somewhere, I don't know. But my dad was there and he actually got to meet Kissinger. And my dad was telling me it was really strange to talk to this man because he felt he wasn't going to have anything to say to Kissinger, considering my father was, basically, he had been a teacher for a time and a blue collar worker and then, white collar, whatever. And then here he is with Kissinger. And Kissinger asks him what he does. And so my father's explaining. And so Kissinger starts asking questions and just firing questions one after the other. And my father was like, I'm actually educating a man who has been the world's diplomat on something. It blew my father's mind away. But that's something that Kissinger had a gift for doing. He could do that. That's what made him a good diplomat. Now, I'm not saying that he succeeded in all of his diplomatic efforts, but it did make him a good diplomat. And that's something that has been lacking in the diplomatic corps for a very long time. Most of the members of the diplomatic corps that are appointed by the presidents, they serve at the pleasure of the president. But usually those are given because, hey, you raised so much money for me, so I'm going to make you the out of shape for this country and the ambassador for that country, and that kind of thing, not taking into consideration that you're going to be part of the diplomatic corps now, and you should exercise certain levels of diplomacy. Well, Trump has blown all of that out of the water because diplomacy has not worked for many years. It has always been kind of like, unless you're paying me, I'm not going to be doing this. And that's not really how diplomacy works. Diplomacy is getting the other side to do your bidding and making them feel like that's what they wanted to do in the first place. So there has been a breakdown in diplomacy for the past, I want to say, at least 25 years. And as such, with Trump now as being president, he feels there's diplomacy the way it used to be is out the door. That's the truth. It's gone. It's no longer viable for a country that is so technologically advanced, that has the wherewithal to be the voice in the world and all this. It's just no longer necessary the way things are right now. So when you see what happened in the Oval Office during the little skirmish that Zelensky and Vance and Trump had, I was looking at Marco Rubio's face, and Marco Rubio was like, "Oh shit, it's going down." And, this is the man who's the head of Secretary of State.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about that, if you've seen the still shot, and our friend Lou put this in probably the best perspective I could have ever imagined. It's like two brothers in the same room waiting for dad to go off, and one's like, "Oh shit, dad's about to go off," and the other one's like, "Oh shit, dad's about to go off." Because they written from ear to ear, and Rubio is just sitting there like, "Oh shit." That's probably one of the best descriptors I've seen of that still shot that's been going around. Because the left has cropped out Vance, and look at how slumped down Rubio is in his chair. What a spineless wuss. Like, whatever, dude. Rubio was thinking it's a good thing Vance is talking right now because I'm so pissed off I'd only be cursing in Spanish.
Yeah, I think, and this was something that Rubio was actually studying the entire situation, and you could tell that. But this is because it's his bailiwick. I'm pretty sure that his job got just a little harder, just a little bit. But it that's part of it. And going back to the whole diplomacy issue, is that, like I said earlier, this is the kind of thing that you do behind closed doors. If you have an issue with someone, you don't do it in front of the cameras. You certainly don't do it in front of the public. You take that where you are certain things will be off the record, because you don't want to show any weakness to anybody, for one. You don't want to show yourself to be a bully to anybody. And you want to make sure that all of the ducks are in a row. This didn't happen today.
Well, it didn't happen today because Trump didn't let it happen.
Exactly.
So
going back, the time for diplomacy is now over. And this is what a lot of people on the left don't seem to realize. Diplomacy has been it's in a coffin, okay? It's being lowered 6 feet under right now. And they don't understand that. They still think the time for Henry Kissinger is still here, and it's not. We have moved past that point.
Their version of diplomacy is just us bending over and saying, "Please, sir, may we have some more?" No, we're done with those things. 2 key points, because these were points that were brought up in the chat. One, because this is something that never would have happened under the Obama administration or under the Biden administration. So I was really kind of pleased when Zelensky tried to push back on Vance and Trump let Vance run with it, because one of the things that the left has been screaming is that Trump hasn't said anything yet about whether J.D. Vance is going to be his successor. He just proved it today, because there's no reason he would have let him run in that room if he didn't trust him within an inch of his life. And that's the biggest difference between the previous two administrations and even the first one with Trump and this one, because he didn't pick Pence. That was the party that picked Pence because
Yeah.
they wanted somebody to bring the centrist back in so they would vote for him. This time Trump got to pick. And I'm going to say it now. They should have let Trump pick the first time. We probably would have had a much different outcome in the first 4 years than we did if they hadn't kept trying to rein Trump in, because we're in a position where he doesn't need to be reined in anymore. That's what we've tried to do for forever, is we've tried to keep the status quo going. We've tried to keep everything running behind the scenes and, supposedly keep the trains on time, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And all that has done is put us more and more and more and more in debt. And it's unsustainable now. And it's been unsustainable for a long time. And everybody keeps pretending that it's just going to be fine. And in reality, we're all running around with our hair on fire because, I mean, think about it. Under the previous administration, our credit rating was downgraded not once, but twice. As
Yep.
far as I know, that hasn't happened since the Great Depression. But
Yeah, I don't remember ever happening, back in the 80s when I started paying attention. So yeah.
so these are the things that I'm talking about, because every time that credit rating got downgraded, our interest payments got more expensive because that means we're responsible for more interest. It's kind of like when you're paying only the minimum payments on your credit card.
Mhm.
Eventually, they start basically making you pay more, and more and more and more and more. And this is what everybody's been trying to explain. If we don't make changes, then the problem that we have is eventually these interest payments are going to become so expensive that we're going to be spending everything that we make to make the interest payments. And then what the hell are we going to do? And that's what everybody's been trying to explain. All of these waste, fraud, and abuse cuts. I don't know if you know this, but I heard a statistic the other day that freaked me the fuck out, because there are several states in the union whose governors have admitted that there is a 20% fraud rate built in on most of these federal programs. If that's what they're willing to admit to, how much deeper does it really go?
20%. That should
20%.
scare anybody. When I worked loss prevention and when I was in retail, do you know what our the acceptable fraud and loss was?
I'm going to say probably about 5%.
Less. Ours,
2%.
depending on the store that I worked at, the company, I should say, Disney probably had the highest at 3%. Musicland had theirs at right between 1.5 and 2%, and that was for loss prevention, including fraud. Including fraud. We had a girl when I went to manage another store. When I was promoted, my old manager hired a young woman to take over my position as assistant manager. And I came one day and I was kind of shocked because she was wearing a dress that was strappy, strappy sundress. And I was like, I thought we had a code. We're not supposed to wear strap sundresses. And he was like, well, like, I didn't say anything because she was cute. But anyway, moving on. It turned out she was,
Giggity giggity. Giggity giggity. Sorry, that was supposed to fire like 2 seconds ago, but delayed reaction.
so it was, Brad, bars don't tolerate alcohol loss over 6%. Brad saying in the chat. So, 20% is abnormally high. And that's on the conservative side of some of these places. So you can imagine how much higher the fraud actually is.
Think about this from a government perspective. With as much of the books as they pad, if they're willing to admit, because I've heard it from several different states, that they're well aware that there's at least a 20% fraud rate baked in, because I've gone and looked, and there's been reports filed in several different states. And with as much as they cook the books, if they're willing to admit to 20%, how much higher is the fraud rate actually? And that's the whole point with just, the whole left's argument with USAID. Well, USAID is like 1% of our budget overall. And we're finding like 60% waste, fraud, and abuse. So I don't think we need to just stop looking here, because this is like an iceberg. And we're talking about just a little bitty sliver of ice poking through the water and a giant thing underneath. And this is why they're really freaking out. This is why they're freaking out over what happened today with Zelensky. This is why they're freaking out over Elon Musk. This is why
Oh,
they're freaking
definitely.
out. This is why they're freaking out over the the autistic giftedness of the internet being turned loose on our books. And I think it's another reason why the SDNY office of New York City's FBI Southern District of New York field office is saying, no, we're not turning shit over. And no, just because we haven't talked about it much today doesn't mean we've forgotten Pam Bondi. Your
No,
deadline
time's ticking. But
your deadline came and went, Chica. Where's Cash Patel with the marshals rounding people up and securing the building? Because that's what needs to happen next. Sorry,
yeah,
I've just been pointed out. I've had this pointed out to me all day that this is all everybody's talking about. So I just randomly like to throw that back into the conversation so nobody thinks we've forgotten, because we're not forgetting.
oh, no, we have not forgotten. But like I was saying about that young woman, about a week afterwards, I had actually told my former boss, I said, that there's something that I don't really understand with the way she's working in the store. And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, there's a young man that comes in to see her a lot. He's like, yeah, she's got a boyfriend. I was like, yeah, it's not a boyfriend. He was like, how can you tell? I was like, dude, I'm a girl. I can tell what a boyfriend is. And he was like, yeah, whatever. Turns out that she was putting counterfeit bills for real ones in the cash register. He was the one that was facilitating the transfer. And so I get called back from my store to go help him in his store because he is now, he's watching, the girl had to be put in handcuffs when they figured this out. And so he didn't have an assistant manager. So I came to help out in the store. And I'm there one day, helping out and everything. And suddenly FBI shows up to talk to my old boss. And so they go to the back, to the office. And then they leave. And I asked him what's going on. It's like, well, I have to turn state's evidence, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at him, I was like, dude, what? He's like, it's fine. It's, I just have to go do, deposition and whatever. And then I'm done. I'm like, what the hell has been going on in the store? But,
Yeah.
That kind of thing, it's on a bigger scale, and states are letting it slide, and this should alarm everybody.
So I want to fire up the Wayback Machine again for just a second. Because does everybody remember in 1993 when Bill Clinton got elected and suddenly him and Vice President Al Gore were sitting in front of a camera behind the podium talking about how they were going to end waste, fraud, and abuse. And
Oh,
suddenly
yes,
they had all these plans in place and they were making all these cuts and they laid a bunch of people off.
they
Does
did
any
have a program. It was called REGO, REGO.
Mhm.
And that was to cut the fraud, the waste, and abuse. And one of the big selling points is that the federal employees wanted to work on this. They wanted to save the American people money because there have been so much waste in the government.
But let's fast forward just a little bit more. What happened in 1998 during those same two people's terms?
Well, I know that there was a couple of government shutdowns and there was a couple of scandals.
Oh no, see, so let me paint a picture for you guys because this is something that I kind of put together in my head earlier today. So in 1993, Bill Clinton starts taking a chainsaw to the government. The establishment doesn't like it, so they start bending his ear, and they remind him of this little group that was created in 1961 by John Kennedy called USAID. And they started showing him all of the cool things that they could do with it, but how they had to be careful about how they did it. And the best thing to do is to get it enshrined into law through Congress. So then they can use it to make changes throughout the world and push their agenda just like we used to do in the Cold War. So if you'll notice, about halfway through his first term, all of those cuts slowly started going away because by then there had already been a flip in the House. The Republicans had gotten their grand new deal with the people, and they had proven that they were going to make changes. And then suddenly everything started returning to normal. And then in 1998, Congress enshrines or codifies USAID. And now, not what, 20, nearly 30 years later, we're finding out that not only is USAID a slush fund that is predominantly used to add to the Democratic ranks, to then allow them to receive high six-figure salaries within the government, that then they put a good portion of the money right back into Democratic causes. But not only that, but at some point it even became a front for the CIA, and it's been used to sow discord all throughout the world. Now, let's take this one step further, because everybody has assumed for the last 40 years that Spooky Dude and now Spawn of Spooky Dude have been using their own money to sow discord around the world and to also sow discord in this country. What we are now understanding is with a few choice donations, he has been given access to USAID money. So it is our own tax money that has been funding our destruction, that has been pushed by the Democratic Party and is being helmed by Spooky Dude and Spawn of Spooky Dude. And this is why they're freaking the fuck out, because we are about 1 degree from Kevin Bacon to be able to put all that shit together. And a lot of us already have, but nobody's listening yet. That's why they're all losing their shit.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, MD, not to put too fine a point on it, but they're sealed around the glass dick. Just saying.
I'm just, I know that there's a lot of people that are still having the discussion, and it amazes me how if you criticize Ukraine, immediately they make you they make the accusations that you're a Putin stooge, or why do you defend Russia? I'm like, I'm not defending either one. I'm like, at the very beginning of this hellacious war that's been going on for the past 3 years, I said there are no good guys here. Both governments are corrupt. Both are run by tyrants. There are no good. The only good guys here are the people that have absolutely no say in this war and are caught in the middle. Those are the people of Russia and the people of Ukraine, the ones that actually have no voice in the matter. Those are the ones I feel bad for. But the politicians, absolutely not. There are no good guys on either side. You cannot convince me otherwise. I have never been able to understand how it was that Zelensky became president. And I understand, before anybody goes there, during martial law, you cannot, during times of war, you cannot have an election. It's in their constitution. Yeah, I get it. But I don't think a lot of people understand that this might be extended for that particular reason. And that is something that a lot of people don't seem to understand, that this could be a war of convenience. The whole of Ukraine and Russia thing is very difficult to understand if you don't live there, and if you are an outsider and have not been paying attention to all of the satellite countries that used to be under the USSR umbrella. So for us, it's like, Ukraine is a sovereign country and they should respect the borders, and Russia did invade. For a lot of people are like, the people that live in that particular area were Russian, and to give an example that some people can understand, there was a time when the Alsace area of France was under Germanic rule. And it wasn't until after World War II, correct me if I'm wrong, MD, that the Alsace went back to France. And if you go to the Alsace area, you'll find a lot of people that still speak German, that have ties to Germany, but they're French citizens, because that part belongs to France. It's really weird when you're in Strasbourg and you go downtown and the restaurants, there's an area called Little France. And I'm going, but you're in France. I don't understand that. Well, that area didn't used to be in France. It used to be in Germany. So, and it's kind of the same issue that they have over there in Ukraine and Russia. Part of Ukraine used to be in Russia. And so this is an entanglement that requires you to actually be part of that particular culture in order to really understand everything that's been going on over there. And I, it's difficult to explain to an outsider, but there are a lot of layers when it comes to this war, and it's rather unfair for people to say, well, if you don't pick Ukraine, then you're picking Russia, and vice versa. It's not that simple. It's very complicated. And frankly, I don't pick either because it's not my area of expertise. I don't really understand it. I would pick the people, their side, easily. But
So
as
here's
for the
my
politics, no.
here's my question, and this is something that's been bothering me. When did it become part of the collective consciousness that Ukraine was our ally?
And that's another thing. I do not recall Ukraine being an ally of the US in
I
any.
remember I remember that at some point, like I said, late 90s, early 2000s, we negotiated with them so that they would get rid of their nuclear weapons. But I don't remember us entering into any kind of formal agreement other than agreeing to protect them against aggression, which again was over a generation ago and before most of us that are standing here right now knew how broke we were. And most of the people that brokered that deal are either dead or thought they were going to be dead by now. So I have problems with all of this because no, I'm
Well,
not a fan
it
of I'm
was
not a fan
it,
of the US breaking
it
their our word, but the world has changed immensely.
but it wasn't just our it wasn't that we were breaking word. It wasn't that there was no limit on this. We were supposed to help them until such time there was a limit. They were supposed to get back on their feet and be militarily successful. That was part of the agreement. That it wasn't going to be a forever thing to
And
take
that's
care
the
of
part yeah,
Ukraine.
and that's the part that I can't get anybody to understand because I get in cash flow, we're talking like 100 and what is it, 120, 150 billion. But if you start talking about all of the equipment and the promise of equipment and, giving them our older stuff so that so our stuff that basically was going to become surplus so that our military industrial complex could spin back up and make some more again, making us more money. So I understand some of this was supposed to be good for our economy. But as we start getting ready to close things out, transitioning just a little bit once we finish this thought, I have a couple of happy stories. But my point with all this is this was never any type of a thing where we basically handed them a black card and said, hey, this thing right here, this has no limit, and we will help you for forever if that's what it takes. Nobody ever said that. And again, I don't remember them ever officially becoming any kind of an ally until the Biden administration was like, yeah, sure, you want to join NATO? Sure, we'll figure it out. And that's when Putin was like, the fuck you will. They're on my border. I don't think so. And I can see his point. But at the same time, for Zelensky to start throwing it up in Trump's face today that Putin broke a deal with Biden and then invaded in 2014, 2015, that he broke a deal with Bush and that he broke a deal or with Obama and then Bush and then eventually even with Biden and tried to say, well, since he never keeps his word, what good is a ceasefire? And Trump's like, he's never broken a deal with me. And one of the things that pissed me off was the reporter asking a what if. Well, what are you going to do if if Putin does this? Why are we talking about what ifs right now in the first fucking place? That's what gets us in trouble all the damn time because we have all these what if scenarios running through our heads. We're trying to find peace. And trust me, there was a lot more work that would have had to have been done. But getting Zelensky to be willing to sit down to the table and actually invest in something that would not only eventually help his country, because the other thing that Zelensky is not telling anybody is Russia has like 70% of their minerals right now because most of their minerals are in the parts that Russia's already seized. And that was something that I didn't discover until today. And you know how often I'm looking over all this shit. So I'm just like, are you kidding me? So we're trying to get a hold of the other 30%, help you keep it, and basically helping you mine it and giving you 50%. We get 50%. And I guarantee you, if we've got contractors on the ground, that means Europe's going to be there helping defend them. That means if we need to, we'll be there helping defend them. And it keeps NATO out of the equation. And you blew up this deal. Why exactly? because he's the one that blew it up. That's the question that I have. And I haven't heard anybody, not even Brett Baer, asked him, why did you go into the room and start trying to pick a fight? I want somebody to ask him that question because there has to be a reason, because he's the one that started trying to pick the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Trump even tried to de-escalate when Vance was picking on him about the suit. It's like, I happen to like the way you're dressed right now. I think you're dressed nice. I think you're dressed fine. Because I don't know if it was a reporter, if it was Vance, because I didn't see it, but I heard it. And the voice reminded me of Vance, but then from the distance in the room, I think it might have been a reporter because somebody was asking him if he even owns a suit. And he got pissed off. And that's when Trump was like, I don't mind the way he's dressed. Because so he was actually trying to openly de-escalate the situation until Zelensky started trying to basically bump chest with Vance, which was fucking stupid. But a happy feel-good story that still falls into the art of the deal and, and the whole negotiation thing. So justice. Most evil cartel bosses in the world are now in American custody. This is from PJ Media through Susan Anderson. On Thursday, Mexico extradited 29 cartel bosses and other prominent members to the United States to face federal charges. And this is according to the New York Times. Among those now in U.S. custody is the infamous Mexican drug lord Rafael Caro Quintero. According to Mexican authorities, he's the founder of the Guadalajara cartel. In 1985, he had his men kidnap DEA agent Enrique Kiki Carmenara, among others, before torturing and kidnapping them. The Netflix program Narcos is about the horrific incident. So, funny thing is, I remember 2 days ago, Donald Trump saying if things didn't change and change drastically in the realm of the drug problem that we have in Canada and Mexico, that tariffs were about to hit. 2 days later, we've got 29 cartel bosses in custody.
Well,
in America.
Some of them are not active. Some of them are former leaders of cartels that have been jailed in Mexico. And this is what I have to caution everybody. Yeah, they're big names and they did a lot of bad things. And extradition, yeah, I'm all for it. But a lot of them are not currently leaders of those cartels. Some of them were big leaders of like Sinaloa, the Z cartel, those, but they were former leaders. And I proceed with caution because this is something that Mexico is notorious for doing. They will say, yes, we will send them, but they always send like people that they already caught, people who are no longer in charge, people that they cannot give Mexico anything anymore. So until I see them actually going after the current leaders of the cartels and starting to take out the heads of that hydra, I will say just, yeah, this is a little bit of good news, but you need to look at it from the point of view of what they are now, not what they did then, but what they are now. So
I understand, and I'm not saying it's a perfect thing, but I'm saying that I
but
would
it is
guarantee
cool that they got extradited because Mexico has I don't think we have an extradition treaty with Mexico, do we? Because that's why Dog the Bounty Hunter got jailed. Because he went in there looking for what's his name.
I think we were supposed to have, and Mexico started being a dick about it. But I mean, I don't know. But I just know my thing about it is, even if they are former folks, there's a good chance they know at least they know at least somebody that's still connected, so they might actually still be able to flip.
Oh no, they still have they do still have those connections. They still have the capabilities of giving up people. The problem is getting to those people after you give them up.
Now here's my pessimistic side, because at this point I'm pretty sure it's the Sinaloa cartel that's running everything in Mexico. So I find it interesting that pretty much everybody that was sent over has no ties to that cartel.
Yeah, exactly. There were no Sinaloa cartel members that given over. There were some from the Z cartel. There were some from the names escape me now. I used to know them all, but that's what I tell her is like, hey, I know this is really good news, but in the bigger picture, these are people that are no longer charging these cartels. As a matter of fact, half of them came from jail. So, and the other half were retired, basically. And so just you have to take it with a grain of salt. This is something that we've known here in Texas, and I'm sure Oklahoma as well. Mexico is run by the cartels. Whatever politicians they have, they control. So to see this, extradition of these 29, once you start looking into each of these people and realize that they no longer have ties to the cartel, or they've retired from that, or they were in jail, serving time for possibly tax evasion, which is pretty much the only jailable offense that a cartel member would have in Mexico, you start seeing the bigger picture. This woman who's president right now in Mexico, she is completely owned by the cartels. I can say that with certainty. I can't give you the receipts, but living where I do and seeing what I see, yeah, I'm pretty sure she is.
All right, so in honor of Brad at least making an appearance in the chat, I figured we'd end the night with a Florida man story. I don't know if he's still in there or not, but Florida man poses as immigration officer at Orlando apartments. It's almost impossible to imagine how a perfect caper such as this one failed, yet somehow it did. Florida man decided to purge his apartment complex of illegal aliens, so he cleverly disguised himself as an ICE agent by putting a gun in his jacket. No ICE uniform, no badge, just a gun and a grim determination to do the job that no one else was willing to do. Sure enough, Florida man was reported for suspicious activity after he stopped a worker at the complex and told him he was investigating illegal immigrants in the area. He was also knocking on several doors and a lot of windows, telling people he was with the police. Surprisingly enough, drugs and alcohol don't seem to have played a part in his decision process. My favorite bit: when deputies arrived, Florida man presented them with a blue card from the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, claiming it proved he was an officer. However, deputies, when questioned later, said the card indicated he had only applied for a Class D security license. Nevertheless, Florida man insisted he was with the government and couldn't be arrested. It is unclear if he was still saying this at the time they processed him in county lockup. Score: impersonation, weapon, preferably unusual. Elan, criminal mastermind. What the fuck were you even thinking? Running total for this Florida man points total was 9.
I wonder if he's related to Brad.
Well, the reason this story caught my attention is because the other night Stacy was talking about somebody that managed to get an ice jacket from like a warehouse supply store and was like running around scaring people off wearing an ice jacket. And that was actually when I first saw this, I thought that was the story. I'm like, he didn't even have the jacket. He just put a fucking gun in his coat and said, "I'm with immigration and I'm here checking."
Wow.
Hey, Brad's still here.
Cojones.
Oh.
Well, it was a good show to revel on about all the happenings today. Those precious 10 minutes that were captured.
That's right. It was on Amazon. She said they had them on Amazon. But because the chat's like, hey, they're on Amazon too. But yeah, I'm just like, that was the story I thought it was at first. And I was like, this dude didn't even have the jacket. He just balled up and said, I am with immigration. But anyway, believe it or not, man, that's already the 90 minutes. Where can folks find you?
You can find me on X at Aggie Weekend and at Aggie the Barkeep. You can find me 8:30 p.m. Eastern Tuesday nights with the Everswap Martini Shark, also known as Brad Slager, doing the Cocktail Lounge. 8:30 p.m. Friday nights, doing He Said, She Said with the awesome you. The first Monday of every month, Jeff and I do Spirited Books, where we review books and that match a libation to each tome that we are reading. And that's also at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And last but not least, second, and I don't even have booze as an excuse. Second Wednesday of every month at 8 p.m., the guys get together for Toxic Masculinity, where we host a Babe of the Month, and I bring the drink of the evening. And how about you, Rick?
Well, in about an hour, because I did the math wrong, you can find me hanging out on the SHR Media BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. They've decided to call an audible and do a special show because of all the shenanigans today. So I'm going to be hanging over there starting at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 so 11 in the East, 8 in the West, and 10 in God's time zone. Yes, for some reason I was thinking that was like starting right now, and I'm like, oh shit, I did the math wrong. So I have an hour. I do that a lot lately. I don't know why, because I used to be really good at those conversions. I guess it's the whole brain is about to turn 52 thing. Then tomorrow night you can find me pushing buttons for Front Porch Forensics starting at their new time, 9 p.m. Eastern, and then 11 p.m. Eastern, Ordnance J. Packard, and I think, hang on, I'm doing this wrong again. Sorry. So they're 7 to 9 my time now, so it would be 8 to 10 Eastern.
Yes.
See, I'm doing them wrong. So yeah, 8 to 10 is Front Porch Forensics. Then 10 to midnight is Juxtaposition in its regular night. And then I will be off Sunday night because for the short term, I am moving and have moved America Off the Rails into to Monday because there's still a show on hiatus there, and I don't want there to be dead air. The only reason I didn't do one this past Monday was because I knew G was going to be off, and I'm like, that means I need to do 2 hours on Wednesday, and I'm not doing an hour and a half on Monday and then 7 hours on Wednesday. No, need another day off. But anyway, so and then Tuesday, that's when everything starts up again, other than the America Off the Rails show on Monday night. So Tuesday through Friday, noon to 3, America Off the Rails. Tuesday night, hanging out with the Manorama panel. Wednesday, full boat. And that's where I'm stopping for now because I got a lot of shit to say, and I'm tired of saying all of it. It's all on our website. Go to klrnradio.com, click on schedule. And you can find me at RowdyRick73 on X. You can find the network at KLRN Radio. You can find our new news arm at Digital Beacon US. And you can find our feeds on the Station X account, my X account, the Rumble channel, the YouTube channel, and the Facebook account. And I think that's it. That's all I'm saying for now Anyway, thank you to everybody who is hanging out with us. And I will see you guys that are willing to come back for the late shift here in about an hour as I hang out with the SHR Media crew.
Good night, everybody.
Smoke them if you got them. And if you don't blame me.